In the Bible, Paul explains that everyone has two bodies, a physical body and a spiritual body. Mediums use their spiritual bodies when they act as a communication bridge between the physical and spirit worlds. As a spirit speaks, mediums hear the information using the ears of their spiritual bodies, then repeat the information to other physical people. Mediumship is synonymous with the biblical term gifts of the Spirit. The focus of our show, Making Known the Unknown, is to provide knowledge through the use of Reverend Hewitt's mediumship and Sidney Schwartz's research. The Bible contains the history of psychic events, along with man-made doctrines created by priests centuries ago. This show will explore the untruths which the Bible entrenched into our society. By uncovering these untruths, we encourage people everywhere to think for themselves with a critical mind.
Hello, and welcome to Making Known the Unknown. I'm your host, Tina Tarryk, and with me today are Sidney Schwartz, middle school teacher from Hackensack, New Jersey, and Bible researcher of, how many years has it been now?
No, 25 plus.
Yeah, 25 plus years. How often do you hear that? Welcome, Sid.
Hi, Tina.
And Reverend Hewitt, founder and pastor of Gifts of the Spirit Church, formerly in Chesterfield, Connecticut, soon to be Charleston, South Carolina.
Right.
And Reverend Hewitt is also a medium. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome to our viewers. We haven't seen you with a fresh new show in a little while, so we hope that you're patient. There are a lot of new changes going on with the Gifts of the Spirit Church, and we hope to share some of that with you this evening. And with that, the title of tonight's show is A New Beginning, and we hope to get into the details of that new beginning shortly. But before that, you know us, we like to talk about current events. There happen to be some very juicy pieces that have come up recently that I wanted to ask our guests about, and the first of which actually was brought to my attention by Sidney, and it has to do with nails being sold. You know, the kind of nails you hit with a hammer? I don't know if you wanted to share that story with us, Sidney.
Sure. At school one day, I started looking at the New York Times, and there was an article about Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of the Christ. And it was talking about how much money it had made and so forth, and also about how much money was brought in by the auxiliary items that went along with the movie. He had a book that was produced, which had pictures from the movie, and then they also mentioned there was jewelry that was sold. And the article in the New York Times gave exact figures, but I don't exactly remember them. But I think it was something like 450,000 crucifixes were sold.
Wow.
And it's something along the lines of 150 or maybe even more thousand pewter nails that were sold.
Nails.
Nails.
Now, nails that look like the nails from the cross?
Exactly. The nails that were used in the crucifixion.
Are you kidding me?
No.
So they weren't the standard, and I'm not a nail expert by any means, 10-penny, 6-penny nails.
No.
What did they look like?
They didn't show a picture of them.
Okay.
But I remember one time, Reverend, you and I were down in Myrtle Beach, and we went to a shopping mall. And in there was a Christian bookstore. And I said, come on, let's go in. Mm-hmm. And when we were in there, they were selling T-shirts. There were nails on the T-shirt. So apparently this is not an uncommon theme that is used by some Christians. I guess they feel that this was the method, this was the vehicle that saves them from sin, because they feel that Jesus died for their sins and he was nailed to the cross and killed, and therefore this is the way that they're freed from their sins, according to their belief. I have a hard time processing it, and I don't understand why anyone would want to have an item that was used in a torturous scene like that as part of their worship, or think that that's important to have. I have a hard time processing it, but you know, a lot of that stuff that I have a hard time processing. So.
No, that wouldn't really be any different than people walking around with a cross around their necks. I mean, it had to do with the crucifixion, a murder, a torture. it's really the same, and he was capitalizing on, or is capitalizing on that, making money off of that. I wonder what a nail would go for. Wonder what he would sell them for. And how many did you say that he had sold?
It was in the hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
What's really going on here? Is this about spirituality or capitalism? Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's pretty neat. There was rumor of another story, and I really don't have my facts straight on this, so I just want our viewers to know, but I had heard wind of that there were 2 female laboratory mice that produced a baby.
Yes.
Do either one of you know any details about that?
I heard this on the radio yesterday.
Oh.
That basically what they did was they took the genetic material from 2 females and created a baby from it. Now,
A baby mouse.
a baby mouse.
Really?
Yeah, and they said that they're working towards this being done in humans eventually, but they said it would be a long way off, but that it could be done. If you think about it, Tina, from what Amon, the angel without a name, explained to us, that when Jesus came into physical form, he entered the womb of Mary and went into the egg, wiped out all the genetic material and reprogrammed it the way he wanted it, so that he would have his brain working at 100%. And in effect, this is kind of the same thing. It's kind of related to cloning, because they're taking the genetic material from, in this case, 2 women, but they have the chromosomes. They're just matching up the chromosomes and creating a baby with it. So it has some very interesting implications, I suppose.
Carl, what do you think of that?
Well, I would advise you, when you talk about it, to say that they created a baby mouse, because some people out there will think they created a human baby.
Yeah, no, it was a baby mouse.
You know how some people are.
Yes.
What have I got to say about it?
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me one bit, because there's so many things that's happening on this planet, but they're happening very, very slow. I mean, my God, by this time, 2004 years after that man was crucified, that things have changed very little, really, as far as I'm concerned. Because he taught the gifts of the Spirit, and this is what he was trying to teach his students. And only 3 out of 12 developed to be instruments of the Spirit, or to put it another way, they became mediums, you see. So stop and think of that. If he was God, as everybody thinks, he could have waved his hand over every one of them, and then they would have the gifts of the Spirit. Doesn't work that way. He came to the world to teach the people that they had the potential of being an instrument of the Spirit, because this is the only way the world of spirit can communicate with us in the physical. They have to use an instrument. Just like he used, after he died, he used the instrument, the physical body of Saul, which the church changed his name to Paul and canonized him as a saint. Saul became the medium, meaning in the middle between the 2 worlds, the world of spirit, the world of the physical. Once you understand this, it becomes so simple.
And then really anything is possible. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay. Imagine the implications for families, the definition of what a family is.
Sure.
If a lesbian couple decides that they want to have a baby, and this happens.
And when the fundamentalists, use the Bible to say that that gay people shouldn't be married because they can't produce children, well, all of a sudden that goes way out the window.
Uh-oh. Okay, all right.
I've had a lot of gay people come to me for readings, and the thing that they've always been complaining about, which they have a real reason to, is the fact that they pay taxes, but yet they don't get the benefits that they would if they were married in a church or something. So they're going to have to do something about that.
Yeah. It's okay to take their money, but they don't get anything
Oh
for
yeah,
it.
Right.
yeah.
There was another piece in the news just this evening as I was having dinner. Of course, I'm at the kitchen table, and the closest thing I had to write on was a napkin, so I wrote it on a napkin for lack of paper. And I don't know if this is still under investigation or not, but evidently two young girls, 14-year-old girls, were complaining that a particular Ukrainian priest in Ansonia had tried to lure them into his van. And I said, okay, that's newsworthy. Let's write that down and talk about it in the show. And I'm going to ask Carl first what he thought about that.
Ansonia, Connecticut?
Yes, in Ansonia, Connecticut. Any comments? Any thoughts?
Doesn't surprise me a bit.
No.
Not a bit.
Think it was just a mistake? The children, the young ladies were...
Well, it could be. It could be. Some young people like that, in order to create attention, they can build up some pretty raunchy stories, just like they did down in North Carolina at one time. And this was one of the saddest things I have ever heard of. I happen to know the man. He was a he was a plumber. His wife was a teacher, and she wanted to open up a school for kindergarten children, pre-kindergarten. And she was doing very well, but there was one kid in there that was constantly doing everything to get attention. He started these rumors, and first thing you know, the man, the plumber, was in one jail, she was in another, and it was a terrible case, and all of these families turned against him and everything else. And when it was brought to court, the jury pronounced him guilty, but there was one Afro-American of the jury, and he would not vote. He said this was all made up by the children. Nobody would listen to him simply because of his color of his skin.
Really?
And both of those people went to prison.
That's a shame.
And it was all made up. So this other thing you read about, I don't know.
Okay. All right.
What were their ages again?
Two 14-year-old girls. Yeah.
I have a feeling it was made up. Very strong feeling it was made up.
That'd be a shame.
Yes.
And just also to let our viewers know that we're not here to bash priests or ministers, because there is a big sex scandal that's rocking a lot of the churches, but that this goes both ways.
Yeah.
People can take advantage of this and profit from it, possibly.
I just have a gut feeling in that in this case, this was made up between those two girls, just to get attention.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us that feedback. What I'd like to jump into next is what has been going on with you, Carl, lately, and why you're no longer in Connecticut. And at the end of this show, our viewers will see one of the first new pieces of information on how to contact Carl if you're interested in a reading or information about these shows. Of course, our email address is still the same as it always has been, so we encourage you to do that as well. But there is no mailing address anymore for our viewers. There is a phone number and an email address, and that should be pretty sufficient for contact at this point.
Well, as you know, in 1982, we were having a seance in Charleston, South Carolina, North Charleston, actually. And I received a message, and it said that you will be the guiding star of his existence in the near future. Well, 4 years after that, an entity appeared on the planet here to another medium that did not know she was a medium. She didn't even know that she was gifted. And she was frightened at first because she didn't believe in the devil, but she thought that this entity, deity, might be the devil. But he proved otherwise, and that he was an ascended master from way back. And he was holding she was holding this convention to try to get people to understand, because she was taking a lot of abuse, that she was the devil's whore and all of that. And so I was invited to go to that event, and he came through the crowd, and he knighted me as a man of God and a teacher. And this was the beginning of that prediction that I received in Charleston. And so after doing a lot of work down there, and then moving up here, working up here, creating a church here, teaching people here, they've told me that I have to go back to Charleston where it started. And this is why I didn't have any choice. I had to go. Everything was pointing to it. It was as if anything I tried to do to keep from going was stopped. And so I just let it all happen, and I have moved to Charleston. And just today, this morning, they told me that there was a reason that they told me to buy the house on this certain street in Charleston, because right up the street, same side of the street, there's a beautiful church, and it is the Methodist Church. And they reminded me that Methodism started by another medium way back. He was a scientist, spent a lot of time by himself in the laboratory, Emanuel Swedenborg, and he heard voices, saw visions, and there was one time in his life that Jesus appeared to him. Now, if the viewers don't believe in this, all you have to do is check it out. There is a film out there. There's a film out there dealing with Emanuel Swedenborg, The Man Who Had to Know. I believe that's the title of the little show. And it was what he was teaching the people from the other dimension through the teaching of Jesus that John Wesley picked it up and created Methodism. I bet a lot of people who are Methodists don't know that.
So now, what's the interesting connection between your house and the Methodist Church?
Well, it's another way of them giving me an example of, because I still have been somewhat lately in denial, you know, like, who am I for this great teacher to appear to? I asked him one time, why didn't you appear to the Pope? Or why didn't you appear to somebody that is somebody? My God, coming to a man that came from a very poor family. I never liked religion at all, because to me it was nothing but mind control. But they've been appearing to me ever as far back as I can remember. So finally now it seems I'm doing what they want me to do. Mm-hmm. So with them influencing you and influencing Sidney and myself to do this TV program, only to get people to open their minds, to wake up and understand that Jesus taught the gifts of the Spirit to all of his 12 students, but he was very disappointed that they didn't develop to be a medium prophet in those days, take the message to the rest of the world.
If you study the history of mediumship, you'll find that Jesus has worked through many different mediums throughout the years.
Really?
There was a man called Levi, and
yes.
he was given the book, the Aquarian Gospel, which explains the missing years that are from the Bible of Jesus' missing years, 18 years. And it tells how he traveled to India and so forth in this book. And it was dictated from the spirit world, I believe directly from Jesus. We were in a camp which had a library that had newspapers going back to I think it was the 20s and 30s, 1920s and 30s. In there was psychic photographs. And one of the pictures that was there was a picture of Jesus. So he was working through a medium to prove that he was working through him. He worked through Saul. So he continuously worked through the people. And to answer Reverend Hewitt's doubts, the only people he's really interested in working with is mediums, because he has the ability to come and physically, materialize and speak to human beings. But obviously he chooses not to. He rather use the gifts of clairaudience and clairvoyance in order to communicate with the people that he can. So he's obviously just talking to people who are mediumistic.
Okay.
Just as you and Sid both know that I have mentioned Lone Eagle and Lone Wolf, the two Indians that have been with me, they're ascended masters. Mm-hmm. Well, Jesus just only a short while ago told me that before he came to the world, before he implanted himself in the womb of Mary to come into the world as a human being, he and Moses and Elijah were together in the other dimension, and they had a meeting as to which one of them would choose to come back as a physical being to teach the world, because the world was in a hell of a mess at the time, because there were so many priests. The priest had all these followers, and this priest would say to his followers, don't be talking to any of those over there connected with that priest. And this is what separated the different people down through the years. And this is why, even in this country here, it was such a terrible thing for one person of one nationality to marry another person. See?
Now, I guess the connection that was made before is that your house is only about a block away from a Methodist church.
Yeah.
And I happened to have visited that area recently, and I got such a kick out of the sign that was outside the church.
Oh, Lord, I forgot about that.
And the sign on the church said, "Extreme makeovers offered inside." And I just had to laugh hysterically every time I drove by. And I'm wondering what kind of makeover. Are they doing nose jobs?
They're doing soul lifts.
They're doing soul lifts. Very good. How about brainwashing? But your house now is just maybe a block away from this church. You have to see it every time you go by.
Well, I was going to put my name on the mailbox, Reverend Carl Hewitt, but I think I'll wait a little while before I do that.
Okay. And also, viewers, for privacy reasons, Reverend Hewitt's personal address is not given out at this point. It is a business phone number. Yeah. It is not his home, and it's a service that he will be using. If you have questions about the show, suggestions, or you would like to book readings, that can happen as well on that number, and that will be featured at the end of these shows from this point on.
I'm 100 miles south of Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
And 100 miles north of Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, I see.
It's a beautiful place.
Okay.
And down there at this moment, all the trees are in full leaf and the flowers are blooming and everything else. And I came up here and we got to Connecticut, no leaves, no flowers. It was like winter again.
You know, I have to ask you this for my personal interest and also because other people have emailed us, called me personally, and contacted the studio. And they've wanted to know, Carl, why are you going into the Bible Belt? Why are you going right into the center of all the Bible thumpers to start this new beginning?
There is nobody that needs to know the truth any more than those in the Bible Belt because they have been under mind control from the time they were born. Mind control, people. You see, Jesus told me to tell the first group of people that I stand in front of, and I'm going to let this go over the air. He said to remind the people they have a brain, remind them they have a mind, and to use it as of that day. There's a lot of people that do not use their own mind because, you know, people, if you really look within yourself, that's where God is. If you say, Lord God of my being, unto the Father within, come forward and give me the answer to this question and present the question because you're presenting the question to the Lord God of your being which is within you. It is the spirit body that is told to you in Corinthians. What's the chapter?
Keep going.
15?
Yeah.
It says you're born with two bodies. You're born with a physical body and you're born with a spirit body.
Chapter 15, 44.
Okay. Spirit body you cannot see. You can't see the wind. You can't see the oxygen that you breathe, and you have to breathe it to live. Nobody ever asks these questions. But they pray to a God that mind control created out there. God is within. Jesus said that himself, that God is within. My God, people, get that in your mind.
Luke 21:17.
Yeah, Luke 21:17, the walking Bible.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to say that. Now, again, though, you're going to be right in the heart. You are in the heart.
When I was down
Bible
there,
Belt.
when I was down there before, the people swarmed in places. I'm not bragging; they swarmed. But when I went on radio and television down there, they were picking it up in Myrtle Beach, 100 miles away. And when I got up to Myrtle Beach to do that seminar, and the police surrounded my car, and the sheriff was there with a summons that if I went in that hotel and I talked to anyone in there, they'd take me to jail. And it was then. I was by myself. I didn't have any of my students with me. There was nobody traveling with me. I was very tired from all the work I had done in Charleston and in Florida. And I was so shocked from that I didn't know how to handle it. And so when the man and wife that sponsored it, they were there too, and they were shocked. And the police wouldn't give me any reason for this at all. They just simply said, I'll be arrested. It is simply because the leaders of all the churches, listening to the programs coming from Charleston, where I was, they didn't want their people to know any of this, because if they did, they would be asking questions. Why don't you teach us what's in the book? You skip around it, you never touch it.
See, the one thing about the people living in the Bible Belt is they do know the Bible.
They do know it.
So when you refer to the Bible, you don't have to explain it so much in detail. You don't have to read it so much in detail because they understand it. So when you explain what the Hebrew words are, and most of the time the Hebrew words have so much more of a psychic meaning, and when they understand how gifts of the Spirit work and then see it placed into the Bible, they can start to understand it, and it turns the Bible from a bunch of fairy tales and a bunch of miracles and impossible happenings to natural phenomena which can be understood, and that becomes very powerful. See, and so they become very interested. Meanwhile, their clergy people feel they're losing control over these people, and therefore they panic and they try to stop it. So you have this dichotomy of what's down there.
There was never a program when I was on the air. It was on every Sunday morning from WCSC in Charleston, and there was never a program on that there was a lot of people calling in and say, why is it that my priest or my preacher, my minister, why don't they tell us about this? It's in the book, I've read it, but I don't understand it, but they don't touch it. Why? And I simply told him, I says, well, it's a threat. It's a threat to what they've been taught, because they are teaching recycled ignorance, and that is coming from me. I call it ignorance. Way back when they first created all of this, it was ignorance. Today it's recycled ignorance. And I had a great following down there in just a short while. And then when I left there and on my way back, I stopped to do that one-night event in Myrtle Beach, and the cops surrounded me. I was absolutely so shocked that I didn't know how to handle it. But if I'd have been smart enough at the time, I would have stayed and have fought that, because they were trying to prevent free speech.
Yeah.
And everything I talk about and teach is in the Bible, every bit of it. He knows that. He knows more about the Bible than I do. And when I pointed it out when I first knew him, he got very excited, because he said, God, it's there. It's in the book.
And that event, and we're not going to say the name of the hotel, but it was a very big, and it still is a very well-known hotel in that area.
Yeah.
That event was booked, paid for, registered, signed, sealed, and delivered.
And
they
sold out.
still came in. Oh, it was sold out.
It was sold out. Sold
Aha.
out.
And somehow still they were able to stop it.
Oh, yeah, the
Wow.
cops came to stop it.
I give you a lot of credit for mustering the courage to go back and do that.
Well, if it's the way I got to die, I'll die that way. I'm trying to share the truth with the people, the truth, because we do have two bodies, and the moment that this heart stops, it gives birth to the spirit body, and the spirit body keeps on going. And for those idiots over in Iraq that think that if they commit suicide and take a bunch of Americans with them, they're going to be rewarded with 72 virgins. Well, I got news for them, and if any of you people out there know any of them, pass it along. When you die and go into the other dimension, you don't have your sex organs with you. So what good is it going to do to have the virgins?
Right, right.
Well, that's how they remain virgins. It's the same 72 women for all of them.
I don't think that qualifies as virgin anymore.
I know you didn't ask me to say that, but
Oh, boy. So what's happening now that you're moving down to Charleston, the Charleston area, is that you're having a big seminar.
having a seminar
This July.
on July 10th on Saturday,
All right,
Making Known the Unknown.
all right. And Sidney, did you want to share a little bit about the seminar?
Well, the three of us are going to be down there, and We're going to present some of the things we do in the show and some of the things we've done in other seminars, and using some of the video clips that we have from used on the show, and weaving it all together to be a cohesive teaching.
Okay.
And I'm going to have my friend, the medium from Indiana, that is able to produce all of the pictures and the messages. He's going to be there. He says, I don't care where you have an event, I will be there to help you out. Because he said, in my books, you're a Dr. Hewitt rather than just Reverend. Because he says, you're trying to prove to the people what is really true. And he said, since I have this gift, I will be there to help you out. And he'll be there too.
Now, just so our viewers know, the gentleman that Carl's talking about is Reverend Hewitt and Robinette, and he's the gentleman that's responsible normally for all the pictures you see on the set, but because they've been moved, we don't have those here tonight, but he is the medium whose gift is precipitated art, and he's hoping to have some of that art come through in that seminar.
And for you people that do not know yet what we're talking about, it's done on 3x5 cards, and it's done in a box where it's totally pitch black in there because they need darkness. And your name is written on the usually the middle of the card, and there are other names all around you. These names, people, are the people that walk with you from the time you were born until you pass away. They're right there to meet you. They're your guides and helpers. They're runners for you. They're the ones that you sometimes do things and you wonder why you're doing this. Somebody is projecting that to you. This is what's happening. All of us have guides. Years ago, they were called angels. Well, you could still call them angels if you want to. But these are where these names are coming from.
Thank you.
In fact, my dear friend, Reverend Bingham in Massachusetts, he wanted me to handle his funeral, and I did. And he writes his name on every card, and he tries to write it bigger than anybody else's name on that.
So just also to let our viewers know that if you would like to register for that seminar in July, at the end of this program and the next few programs that we will be producing between now and July 10th, you can call that phone number to make a reservation. And it is first come, first serve. And we only have limited seating available, so be one of the first ones. We will also be offering Reverend Hewitt and Sidney Schwartz's book, My First Encounter with an Angel, which I don't have because they're also packed. But that book will also be at a very special discount on that seminar. So that is a great deal. I also want to remind our viewers that with the new season coming up in Adelphia, that our time slot is going to be moved to Sundays at 9:30. That's 9:30 a.m. on Sundays. So look for us then. And I think that with a lot of the other programming that is there on Sundays, that this would give Sunday a balance.
I believe you. Very much so.
Any other news you would like to share, Carl, with respect to being in the Charleston area?
Well, I'm so mentally and physically exhausted. This is why, I didn't even have a chance to clean up. That's why I was joking with the manager here of not using the color cameras, using black and white cameras, because we look like a couple of bums.
That's okay. It's Casual Friday.
Right.
That's what we call it, Casual Friday. So your goal in South Carolina is actually to establish Gifts of the Spirit Church.
A temple down there to teach the people.
Okay.
I'm sure there's going to be a backlash from the other people, because if they're not mediums, they're not going to like a medium, because a medium is a threat to them, just as Jesus was a threat to the priest at the time. And it was the priest that had him killed, by the way, people, because they couldn't compete with the man, not at all.
Last December, Reverend Hewitt spoke at a, not a funeral, what do they call that when it's not a funeral?
Wake?
No, when it's, the body's not there, a memorial service.
Memorial service.
And it was held in a Methodist church not far from where he's currently living. And the people had a little bit of a hard time understanding it. And when Reverend Hewitt sat down after he finished speaking, the pastor of the church got up and said, thanked Reverend Hewitt for his speech, but he at that particular Methodist church could not really endorse everything that he said.
Oh boy.
That didn't bother me a bit.
Does not reflect the views
That's
of
right, exactly.
blah, blah, blah.
That was the better way, probably more accurate way of what he said, yes.
Very interesting.
Didn't bother me a bit.
Heaven forbid you take his business away.
This is why Jesus, that poor man, was suffering so badly, and he was hanging on that cross, hoping that his heart will stop so he'd get out of that misery. He tried to look over his shoulder. He looked back at the people because he felt sorry for them. I feel sorry for people. I really do. I feel sorry for them that has been misled in the name of religion. I don't care who you are, what you've done. When you die, you're going to go to the dimension that you prepared for yourself right here. If you're a musician, you're going to go where musicians go. If you're an artist, you're going to go where the artists go, and so on. And there is no such thing as hell. That was created through mind control. There is no such thing as the devil. Now, if you want to contradict me, ask yourself this question. If God wrote the 10 Commandments, why didn't he write the 11th one? Why didn't he tell you about the man who lived at the end of the street in that house? Because he's a devil and he's out to get you. There's not one word in the 10 Commandments that would indicate the devil or hell. It was all created.
And you have to remember, it's one of the few places in the Bible when God gave the 10 Commandments that the people actually heard the voice of Spirit.
Yes.
Because they were using a trumpet, and therefore psychically ungifted people could hear the voice of God. It wasn't Abraham who was clairaudiently listening and then repeating it, or Moses who was clairaudiently listening and repeating it. The people heard it themselves.
Yeah.
And it says afterwards that the people were very scared because they heard the voice of God, because they didn't understand it, and it frightened them with all the thunder and lightning and everything that was going on. So he hears this grand opportunity, and this almost once-in-a-lifetime situation where God's speaking directly to the people, because it didn't happen all that often that direct voice happened. And so you would think that if the devil really existed, that would have been a pretty important thing to talk about, rather than you shouldn't covet of somebody else's ox. You know, I mean, you know, it doesn't make any sense.
And the other thing I'd like to get across to the people as to where that word on high comes from. You see, on the earth plane here, we in physical form, we operate on a certain vibration, and it would be low vibration. They've even explained to me that if we take our radio in our auto machines and we put it on the AM frequency, that would be considered the lower rate of vibration of the radio system. We flip it over to the FM, we're on a higher rate of vibration. And back in those days, when words came from nowhere and yet from everywhere to the people, they would say it came from on high, a higher rate of vibration. So the church leaders, those ignoramuses, always would point up that it came from out in the sky somewhere. There's no such thing. God, the people that lived before and have passed on, they're right here with us, just as the wind is, just as the oxygen is. If you had the eyes to see, and if they wanted to cooperate with you and materialize, you would see them. You wouldn't see them walking around with the best clothes on, because they all have like well, it's not exactly a gown, but what would you call it?
Yeah, that's a shroud, I think.
Shroud, all right, we call it a shroud. But they live in harmony in another dimension, and it's approximately 70 years in that dimension, whatever dimension they go to, and then by that time they're ready to come back. And if somebody in their family, some woman in their family, she conceives, and if it's a woman over there that's ready to come back, that woman would notice the color of the auric field around the body of the woman who's just conceived. That would indicate that she's conceived. And if she was carrying the...
You're talking about that the aura would have changed from a white to a rose gold.
It would go from an off-white to a rose gold color. And if she saw that it was going to be a female, then she would wait until the woman was 96 days into the pregnancy. She would lower her frequencies down 7 levels, enter through the solar plexus of this woman, and seating herself in the chest region of that little baby. And that was then that the baby starts kicking for the first time. And it will kick and move around until it adjusts to that new frequency, because up to that point, this little baby is only another organ of the mother's body. And then eventually the child comes into the world, and sometimes the soul that entered realizes that they have come through at the wrong time, or they've entered through the wrong vessel, and they withdraw. This is known as a crib death in many cases, or a miscarriage. And I said to them, when they explained that to me, I said, well, that's very cruel for the parents. They said, that's the way it is. That's all they said. That's the way it is.
Well, the pro-life group wouldn't be thrilled with the explanation about the soul of the baby seating itself.
There is no soul when the baby is at the time of conception. There's no soul there. The soul enters after, and comes into life and stays here approximately 70 years, approximately, and then when the person dies, their spirit body goes into this other dimension for a good approximate 70 years. Then they come back again, over and over and over. This is what is meant by living forever, for eternity.
Right.
It's only the physical that dies.
Anyone explained that there really wasn't anything morally wrong, if you want to use those terms, with an abortion, because the soul isn't in the body at that point. When the woman conceives and her auric field, her aura changes, the soul of the infant attaches itself to the auric field of the mother and remains there for the 90 some odd days.
Really?
And what they're doing is they're orchestrating the genetics that's going on within the little body. So they're deciding what kind of hair they want.
Very interesting.
But in actuality, there's, according to what he said, it's just like any other organ of the mother's body, and there's nothing really terribly wrong with having an abortion.
And there are some times that the baby will take on the imprint of the life before and show up now in this life. So sometimes a little boy might be the spitting image of his great-grandfather, you know?
Right.
And again, a child could be a very good musician, because in the past life they were a musician. This gives them the knack to do it in this life, you understand?
Okay.
And then sometimes the child takes on the genes, the genetics from its parents, and leaves behind the imprint of the past life.
Well, you can certainly see in some families that there are children that neither look like the mother nor their father, and they look like a grandparent a couple generations back. So
Right.
They told me
sense.
that there at times that a family has 4 children, 3 or 4 children, and usually the next one coming up would have more of the imprint of their life before than the genetics of its parents.
Really?
And that's why the hair of the child could be, say for instance, the other children, 3 children now, the children could have dark hair, dark eyes, dark complexion, and this other child comes along and has blonde hair, blue eyes, light complexion, and the father thinks it's his wife slept with another man.
The milkman baby.
Milkman baby, yeah. But that is not true.
Okay.
It was the genetics that's coming through.
Now, let me clarify something, too, that you are also going to be conducting classes.
Yeah.
You're going to be starting classes in that area.
Yeah,
With more students.
yeah.
And,
Development classes.
okay, development classes. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, see, when a group of people come, as there will be in July, I'll be able to see the auric field around the people, just as Jesus saw the auric field around all of his students, the 12 disciples. I can tell the ones that have the potential. That doesn't mean it'll develop, but they have the potential. And we'll get them together, and then when once you get them to the point that they're all of the same mindset, the vibration in the room is beyond anything that can be described. I have seen the time that men, burly, rugged men, you'd never see them shed a tear, and they break down and cry. And then they blame it on me that I did something to make me, you know. It is because they touch within themselves the God within. And they became so happy during that time that what else could they do but cry, just like a baby.
Right.
I've seen this happen so many times. And a lot of people even cry at the end of the session because they can't wait. They just don't want to wait till another week, because usually the classes are once a week, you see. But all this takes a lot of energy out of the medium, so I couldn't possibly do it every night.
Okay. All right.
And this is what I had up here for a long, long time, until a certain amount of jealousy crept in from among the people.
Now, you also have a second book in the works.
Yes.
Did you want to share a little bit about what's going on with that to our viewers?
Well, we're in the process of trying to seek out some endorsements, and hopefully the endorsements will lead to us getting a publisher.
Okay.
And we've contacted about 10 different people, some celebrities, some political figures, and various different people to help promote crossovers.
Can you talk about the title of the book?
Crossovers?
Yeah, can you say what the title is and a little bit about
It's
it?
Crossovers and the Origins of Homosexuality. It's based on the teachings of Awan, the angel without a name, who came through and told us in detail that homosexuality began in the Hittite kingdom through a religious ritual that was practiced at the time, and that was performed on young girls, and when they reincarnated, they would have the same horrible experience over and over again. And so at one point they decided to not to cross over and go into a male body, have a female soul entering a male body. And since love comes from the soul, this female soul was naturally attracted to another male body, and it caused homosexuality. We traveled to Turkey, Carl and I, and another friend of ours, and we actually found evidence carved into a stone monument which corroborated exactly what A1 had said. And so we wrote a book about it, about not only that, but other aspects of why homosexuality is condemned by the Bible, and what, you know, it all goes back. It's interwoven with mediumship and the struggle between the priests and the mediums.
There was a young man that came to me for a reading, and the entity that was working through me to him told him to take the gun out of his pocket and put it on the desk, otherwise he will not get a reading. And this young man was very belligerent, but he finally took the gun out. You see, he was going to commit suicide that afternoon. And he came to me as the last resort because his aunt sent him there because I was clairvoyant. And it was this entity that came through and told him he needs to know the truth about his soul, but there's another person that needs to hear this story, which turned out to be him. And when he was able to come from New Jersey, and then the young man came in, the energy came through, took over my body, and told him the whole story here, what happened. And if the female soul crossed over and came back in as a male body and was attracted to another man, then eventually the soul started begging whoever that they would rather come back, they would rather be in their own body, their own sex, their own gender. And then when the female soul crossed back over into female body, not realizing it had become so masculinized that now it's in a female body, and the female body is attracted to another female.
Okay.
And this has caused lesbianism all over the world. And this religion, he told us that it lasted over 400 years. And it was all of those people that crossed over that has caused this to be all over the world.
Wow.
And that any person that is attracted to their own gender was born that way.
Hmm.
And regardless of what anyone says, the Bible thumpers, whoever, they can't be changed. It's a natural thing.
I would imagine that this would be probably very helpful to some people who've been searching for that answer,
Yes.
and very validating to some people too. But I'm sure that there are people who are gay who are also very religious still,
Yeah.
and that must be a major conflict, I'm guessing, to this day. And hopefully this book will provide some relief.
Well,
as
there's
well.
a lot of, over the years have come to me, and they said that they don't believe there's a God, because if there was a God, they wouldn't allow them to be born that way. So we feel now that the book will answer so many questions and help so many people out. Not only those that are gay, but their parents. There was some people that crossed over on my path that their parents actually threw them out of the house, would never talk to them again. That must be a horrible thing for a young person to be totally cast out like a sick animal.
In my own personal experience, I've run across that. I've run across friends who were disowned by their family as soon as they told them they were gay. I've run across a whole variety of things. I've had friends who were chased down and threatened to be killed by people
It's
who
very
had
sad.
heard that they were gay. Very sad, it is.
It is.
It's a shame. So, the hopes are that this book will be well received, and the timing is right. The timing
Yes.
is very good. I had one other question that kind of jumps back into something you were talking about before, and that has to do with where do priests go when they die? Don't they go and sit at the heels of God or Jesus and become
No.
their favorite in their kingdom? Where do priests go when they die?
They go to the level that they've created. If it's a priest that's good, there's a lot of priests out there that's very good, really, very good.
Okay.
And they will go to other levels of where priests go, but they're not necessarily dressed in that rigging that they wear, so they can be identified. But if the person is miserable and hard to get along with, they'll go to a dimension where people are all the same way. They all become a mirror image of each other. And if they ever desire to be better, then just sending that thought out there is picked up by somebody, a higher ascended master, and that ascended master that picks it up will come and appear to them and, to be their friend, but they'll never tell them anything. I am from up there somewhere. They become friends, and then after a while, this ascended master will say to this person, now that we've become friends, there's a place I've been wanting to go to, and I'd like very, very much if you would go with me sometime. I just don't want to go by myself. And so this person gives that some thought, and finally they say, well, where is this place you want to go? Well, I think I know how to get there, but I don't know exactly. But if you'll go along with me, and I'm sure we'll make it. And this person says, well, suppose I don't like it, and I want to come back here. How will I get back? I promise you I will bring you back. I'll help you. So they go to the dimension where this other person has been, the good person, see? This person only finds it strange that this person is so friendly and so kind and nice to him. And then they go to this other place, and he finds everybody is that way. Everybody is very kind and friendly and nice and everything else. And eventually this other person will say, well, are you about ready to go back to where you were? Oh, no, do I have to go back? Can I stay here? This is the way it is.
Okay.
You have a desire, because it's the God body having a desire to be where it's better. You can call that heaven if you want to. Heaven is a state of mind, that's all there is to it, not a place.
I guess what I'm getting at are specifically more the Bible thumpers who really keep people locked in that ignorance. And when they die, then they would end up with others of their type
Yeah.
and never really never really progress in their knowledge and then
No.
come right back and do it again.
Exactly.
But they do have a
Exactly.
chance to change that if they want to. So
That's
we don't have
right.
to always see what we see now.
Because knowledge is stored in the soul, not the brain. This is a receiver. And knowledge is what I've been saying all the time. Knowledge is your passport into forever. You can use that word heaven if you want to. But that's where knowledge is stored.
I write about, in my first encounter with an angel, about the experience that Carl and I had out in Camp Chesterfield, where we were visiting some mediums. And my grandmother came into the cafeteria after someone opened the door for her because she didn't know she could walk through. And she had been around me long enough, and we had been there for several days, that she finally realized that all her kosher pots and pans didn't mean anything. So she stood there and was throwing them out her window in the spirit world that she had created for herself, because she was still doing the same thing she had done on earth, and now finally realized that was no longer needed or necessary, because that doesn't make any difference to your spiritual growth. So they can learn even from us. There's so many times when Carl was holding services that he said there was more spirit people in the room than there were physical people in the room, and they were coming there to learn the knowledge, because they didn't learn it in this dimension, because they were learning it from that dimension.
Okay.
So people who are interested in become aware of it can learn over there and progress from what we're doing here, and from the relatives who are involved in gaining knowledge.
The other thing that I learned at that same day, that same time out in Indiana, his father, I never knew his father, but his father was like a maniac. His father had been dead, what, two years? Huh?
2 years.
2 years. His father was like a maniac. He was going into all the seance rooms. I mean, like trying to tear the door down. He was checking everything out because he would not believe this.
He
Wow.
always thought this work had made no sense, and then they hooked him up to the trumpet, so I got to speak to him. And I asked the question to him. I said, "Okay, Dad," I said, when you were on this plane, you kept telling me when you're dead, you're dead. So what gives?" He said, "Some people have to live and learn, some people have to die and learn." And so he was learning from that dimension.
Isn't that something?
Yes.
And then when we got out of that last seance, I'll never forget it, he was so angry that he kept kicking the dirt and everything else, and he was saying that word, that S-O-B, and he kept going. I said, "What's the matter with you anyway? What a wonderful experience we have." And I said, "Who are you swearing at? Those damn ministers, those damn priests, those damn rabbis. You know, they've been hiding the truth about this work all of this time from all of us."
Well, with that, I need to wrap up. We're running out of time for this show. And I remind our viewers that we are not hiding the truth from you. If you have the courage to listen to this and open up your mind, you will learn a lot. And I'm guessing your life can only improve from opening up your mind. I want to remind our viewers that at the end of the program, the new phone number to make reservations for the seminar in July and to contact Carl or Sidney with respect to the show with any questions, ideas, suggestions is 843-571-2334. The email address is still making_known@yahoo.com. I want to thank my guests, Sidney.
Our new time
and
slot.
Carl.
Don't forget to remind them.
Right, and thank you. And our new time slot is Sundays at 9:30. And again, thank you, Sidney.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Carl. Thank you,
Welcome.
viewers. Until next time, be well.